All right. It is Wednesday, which obviously means NetSuite, and today is our second to last NetSuite. Next week will be a last NetSuite, and then you're going to miss it with Star. Okay, it's feel like Anna Kendrick in the Pitch Perfect movie. So you're going to be thinking about instead of playing with cups, you're just going to be like singing. You're going to miss what I'm going doing NetSuite. Yeah, I don't know the way it worked out. Yeah. Somehow I don't think the movie would have been nearly as marketable if she had been doing NetSuite while singing that song. Yeah, I don't know. She's a very talented actress, though, so who knows? Who knows? Quick announcements I want to make sure that we're up to date on. So I did post a link a while back. This is in the week 15 of the content folder. It's called the AI Research Presentation Date Selection. So keep in mind that everybody in this class will have like a brief 5-minute presentation of their AI research project. It's not meant to stress out. It's just mostly to summarize the results. Pretty low intensity process of presentation. For the sign up sheet, you do need to go to this link, and I did tell you that you need to sign in. That's supposed to be you, typos. You need to sign into Google using your Trim State account to access the spreadsheet. If you go there, almost all the days on Wednesday and Monday or Monday, Wednesday, and I just realized that I'm recording this, so now I'm a cyberbully, so I'm putting people's names up there. Sorry, folks. I'll make sure it's not here, but you might want to sign in to get a date on that. Don't sign in while I'm recording. Come on now. Have some respect. All right. Okay. I saw that. But yeah, there's the last times to note there. All right. So yeah, demands for Wednesday and Monday. No, not so much demand on Friday. All right. So let's talk about NetSuite. So today we're going to be doing our revenue process, which makes sense because we've already done our purchasing process and now we have things to sell. So let's go ahead and get on selling them. That's what I say. Everybody on board with me on that? Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to customize some reports. And that sounds like it's a really intense process. To be honest, it's actually really, really easy. But I want to set up reports and I want to kind of give you an insight if we wanted to create our own reports for a purpose, how would we go about doing that? Now, the easiest way I found to do something, and this is true for anything in the business world, is to take something that's already established and just to modify it. So that's basically what we're going to do. We're going to create 3 custom reports, and all we're going to do is we're going to take things that we've already done, and we're just going to edit them slightly. Okay? And when I say slightly, that is a literal statement. It is very, very slight that we're going to make edits for. So let's go to customizations, and we're going to go to forms and transaction forms. So it's customization forms and transaction forms. Go ahead and click on that. I'm just going to show the link and the path that we're going on here. Customization forms, transaction forms. And you will notice that we have a lot of different forms that are listed here for different types of processes. Since we're going to be focusing on the revenue process, we're going to focus on the forms that are related to the revenue process. So keep in mind that revenue process involves some pretty basic steps. We receive a purchase order from a customer. Now, I know that you're saying, oh, so we're going to edit the purchase order form. Now, before you move forward, when we talk about a purchase order from a customer, that's a proprietary form from them. They create that form and give it to us. So we don't create that in NetSuite. They send us the purchase order form. If they're on NetSuite, they can send it to us through NetSuite. But for all their intents and purposes, we're going to assume it's an external form. We take that purchase order form and we create a sales order. Once we create the sales order, then we can create the shipping documentation, and then we can generate the invoice. And then once the invoice is generated, they send us payment. So we're going to edit 3 forms. We're going to create, or basically revise 3 forms. We're going to revise the sales order form, the invoice form, and the customer payment form. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to scroll down and find over here at type, I'd like you to find sales order. And you'll notice there's multiple forms that are listed under sales order. The one that's currently preferred as our default is 305. That's sales order, and you can see it's locked right there, which is not anything barring to us to be able to use it because we're going to create a copy of it for our own purposes. So this is the form I want to do it. Again, make sure you're using the exact form that I specify. If you use a different form, then it's going to get really, really dicey when we get a little bit later on. So next to the 305 where it says customize, I'd like you to click on the word customize. What that's going to do is it's going to allow us to create a new form that's basically got this template, and we're going to make some very, very minor modifications. Now, even though these modifications are very minor, I need you to step with me and make sure you do every single one of the modifications exactly as I say them. If you try to shortcut, you may run into some problems. One really notable one is we're going to rename this form, and you need to rename it exactly as I tell you to rename it. If you try to cut corners and say, well, I'm going to leave out a word here, you may actually be renaming it to a form that's already in the database, and then it won't allow you to do that. So even though we're doing minor modifications, please make sure you follow exactly my steps. That's going to be a recurring theme throughout the day, is you need to do exactly what I tell you to do. Because if you try to do something different, it's going to make you, you're going to be replicating a lot of steps later on because you're going to fall behind because it's going to say error or can't do that or something like that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a couple of minor changes, like I said. The first changes we're going to do is we're going to change the name of this form. Now it currently says sales order 2 because the sales order form is the listed one. What I'd like you to change this to is I'd like you to change this to primary sales order form. And it needs to be exactly those words. If you say primary sales order, it's not going to work. It needs to be primary sales order form, exactly those 4 words. Also, let's go ahead and change our printing type over here to basic. This is just going to make it a little bit easier for us to print out later on. So primary sales order form basic. We're also going to make one other change. In the printing field sub-tab down here in the purple, click on the printing field. Let's go ahead and print our company name in our form as well. So it's currently got company logo and company address listed out. Go ahead and click the box and that's to print company name. All right, so we did 3 changes just to refer. And by the way, these are going to be the same changes we make for the other 3 forms. So it's the reason I'm going over this over and over again. So if you get lost, you know exactly what we're going to be doing. Change this to primary sales order form. Again, wording has to be precise. We change this to basic, and then we're adding a company name by checking the box next to company name. Those are the only changes that we made. But if we do that, we can go ahead and save. Once you finished all that, go ahead and click on save. And if we've done everything properly, we should have a new preferred form for our sales order. It should be our primary sales order form. We'll be able to check that. The computer would move faster than this. I don't have any funny anecdotes to tell you this today. Sorry, it's a Wednesday. All right, moving down. Sales order should be able to check and see now that we got primary sales order form. It's preferred. And since this is a form that we created, it's no longer going to be a standardized form for NetSuite. It's a customized, or it's a form that we've already customized so we can edit this form. It's our form. But it should be a new internal ID and new sales order form, and it should be our preferred form for sales orders. All right, everybody catch up or good on that? Let's go ahead and do another one. So our next form that we're going to edit our invoice form. And the same process holds true. We're going to find where it says invoice. It's got a little locked object note to it. It's probably 292 is your internal ID. We're going to customize that form as well. All right, just as before, we're going to change it from invoice 2 to primary invoice form. Again, wording needs to be precise on this one. Primary invoice will not work. Primary invoice form is really what we need to do. Going to change the printing type to basic. And we're also going to go to our printing fields. And we're going to add the company name. So pretty much what we did for the previous one, except we're changing the name to primary invoice form rather than primary sales order form. Everything else is consistent. Once you've made those 3 changes, you can go and save the form. Just to reiterate, primary invoice form, change the printing type to basic. Make sure you add the company name in your form. Go ahead and click on save. All right, so that's going to be 2 forms down. We did our sales order check, our sales order change. We changed our invoice form. Go ahead and check and make sure you should have a primary invoice in that form now that's your preferred form. Now we're going to do payment form, the customer payment form. So you'll notice it says customer payment. Same criteria as before. We're going to click on customize next to that form. And you can probably guess the changes we're going to make. They're going to be exactly the same changes we made before. So I won't even guide you through this one. I'll let you make the changes on your own, but please make sure you're consistent with those changes. Once you've made those 3 changes to this form, click on Save. All right, check our customer payment form. So in payment, we should now have a new form. Why is that still paying? Okay. So we have primary customer payment form, which is a preferred form. That's the form we just created. So now you've created those 3 forms, which is great because those are the forms that we need in order to complete this process. However, we are going to take a bit of a detour before we start creating our sales order. Let's go ahead and do a check on something. So what I'd like for you to do, I'd like you to go to Setup, Accounting, and then scroll down to Accounting Preferences. This should seem really familiar because this is the place we went for our purchasing process. While we're here, let's just go ahead and reflect upon what it is we did for the purchasing process and talk about why we did it. So remember, we went to Order Management, and I had you scroll down to Receiving. And we checked to make sure that this box was not checked. What was the reasoning behind that? The billing and advance receipt, we wanted to make sure that box was not checked.
I'm so sorry. You said set up accounting what?
Set up accounting preferences. Yeah. So under Order Management, we went to Receiving, and remember we said, don't make sure this box is not checked. And it's not, okay? It was in previous versions of NetSuite, which is kind of interesting that this box was checked, but we wanted to make sure it was unchecked. What was the reasoning behind that? So it says bill in advance of receipt. That means that our vendors can send invoices to us before they send the goods to us. Is that a good business model right there? Probably not. The vendors say, you know what? We're not going to actually send them the goods. We're just going to send an invoice and see if they'll pay it. If they pay it, free money for us, okay? That's kind of shady for vendors to do, but under this criteria, we can actually set them up to do that. So we got to make sure that box is not checked. Everybody understand that control right there? All right, I want to challenge you with this one, okay? Scroll back up to the top. Under sales orders, you'll notice highlighted in blue that it says default sales order status pending approval. Okay. Now let's go ahead and click the down arrow here. I don't want you to change anything, but I want you to look at the options. One says pending approval, the other one says pending fulfillment. Those are kind of the 2 options here. Which one should we default to, you think? What are your thoughts on this? I'll let you think about it while I look for my pen. I've lost my pen somehow. Yeah, there we go. Oh, it's in my pocket. Okay, there we go. That was all the time you had. That's all the time you had. My pen is now back in my pocket. So which one do we want? Do we want pending approval or pending fulfillment? Pending approval, right, okay. Why do we want pending approval? Because when we create a sales order, we want to make sure that sales order gets approved. If we leave that at pending fulfillment, then that basically means that anytime a sales order gets created, that it goes immediately to shipping, and they can go ahead and set up, or they can go ahead and approve that sales order, or they can go ahead and process that sales order without approval. Now, you might be asking, why do we actually have these 2 options here? In our scenario, we're going to be talking about single manually entered transactions that we do that's through a manual process that we're going to be setting up through NetSuite. We're only going to be doing 1 transaction, so it only makes sense that we probably want to do the approval of a transaction. In a scenario where we've got continuous transactions, multiple people entering transactions, even automated transactions, we may not want to wait for approval. There may be like a fulfillment limit. It may say, as long as these transactions are less than $1,000, they're automatically approved. In our scenario, we want approval for every single transaction. We don't want them going to fulfillment until they've been approved. So that's why we've got that set up. So there's a reason why we might change that, but for the time being, we're going to leave that as pending approval because that's a control. We're saying every time a sales order is created, make sure it gets approved. So we're not changing anything here, but we do need to understand the reasoning by why we have this default sales order status set up. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to transactions, sales, I'm too far down, enter sales orders. Transactions, sales, enter sales orders. So as you can probably guess, through this path, we're going to enter a sales order, which is kind of our quote unquote first step in the revenue process. Now, this is not truly the first step. If you go back to when we talked about this, the revenue cycle, when we create the sales order, that's actually after we've set a quote to the customer and they verified, yes, we want to actually do business with this client. So they want to do business with us. So what did I say earlier they're going to send us? They're going to send us a document that they generated. I actually talked about it like 10 minutes ago, maybe less than 10 minutes ago. Their own internally generated document that they say they want to buy goods from us. It's also the same document that we create when we want to buy goods from somebody else. What is that document called? A purchase order. Yes, purchase order. Okay. So basically, think about it this way. You've got either a handwritten document, or a typed out document, a printed out document, or you've got an electronic document delivered to you. We'll just pretend that we have something in hand, a document in hand. And we're looking at this document saying, all right, we've approved this purchase order that we can actually go ahead and process for this customer. Let's go ahead and enter the sales order. So let's go ahead and create a sales order. We're going to do a separate approval process here in just a bit, but let's go ahead and enter the information. So on your purchase order that you received from your customer, this is from Zenith Systems. Now you'll notice there's a couple things before we enter here. Today's date is entered. We've got a sequential order generation that's automatic. We don't have to enter that here. Also check and make sure that we've got primary sales order form listed here. That's the sales order form we just created. That's our preferred forms. That should be our default. We also have status pending approval, which we talked about the reason for that here just a little bit ago. So let's type in 10, and you should notice it says customer Zenith Systems. I'm gonna hit the tab key, and it's gonna freeze for like 10 years. At least that's what it seemed like when I was doing this earlier. It's gonna actually put information in for us, but it takes a little while for NetSuite to process that. Actually, that was not all long at all. I swear when I was working on this Monday afternoon, I like put it in and I thought the computer had frozen. I was like, what the heck's going on? My computer has died. And my computer is actually pretty good. All right. So what did I say that we have in hand? What are we putting this information in from? Purchase order, okay? So the purchase order is going to have an internally generated ID on here, okay? We got this in hand, our internally generated ID. Let's say their internally generated purchase order ID is A367. See what I did there? We're in accounting 367. Yeah, okay, yeah. It's the little things that you got to do to keep yourself sane, all right? So customer purchase order is A367. Also, this is not a mandatory step, but we want it for reference. This is a mandatory step. If you skip this next step, you're in a lot of misery. How do I know that? Because I skipped this next step and I was in a lot of misery when I was working on this on Monday. All right, so let's go ahead and put in the location. I put in US 1. Seems like such a small thing. Why would we desperately need that? Trying to go back and edit it, it's really, really folly. It just makes a lot of steps. So make sure we've got Zenith Systems, purchase order number here, and then we've got location US 1. This one's especially important. If you skip this step, you're going to be doing a lot of rework. Okay, so now we're going to sell something to Zenith Systems. The one thing that we know that we want to sell is those textbooks that we created. So we're going to type in it's going to have the I Love AIS textbooks. Once you actually enter the item number, it will enter a description for you, as well as the information, the price, the amount on hand, and the amount that we're selling for. So we'll say that they want to buy 5 AIS textbooks from us. So we're going to put in quantity of 5. That's all we really need to enter is I Love AIS textbook and then the quantity of 5, and it'll calculate the price for us. You see the amount is $149.95, which is just $29.95 times 5. Once you've done that, go ahead and click on Add. All right. So we've got our orders created, but we want to check a few things. So there's a few things more that we want to do. Let's go ahead and click on the shipping subtab. So practically speaking, we've got the purchase order in our hands. We would want to check and make sure who we're going to ship this to. And we check the purchase order address to this address right here to make sure that we're sending to the right place. Also, let's go ahead and specify a shipping carrier. Now, this is going to be confusing, but it won't work unless we do it this way. I don't know why. It's some default in NetSuite that's really weird. Do not change shipping carrier. Leave it at more. Instead, I want you to go to shipping method. I want you to select UPS. Now let's go ahead and set a shipping cost of $10. The shipping carrier, for some odd reason, should be more. Shipping method is going to be UPS. I'm going to say shipping cost $10. Now, I realize that makes no sense. The shipping carrier should be UPS. The shipping method should be like ground or flight or whatever. This is just the way they have it set up in the system. I don't know why it's working that way. Everybody here good? More UPS, $10? All right, let's go over to billing. Just so we can make sure the calculation mechanism works, let's change the terms to 1%, 10, and 30. Because we're going to see if our customers can actually get that discount. All right, so let's just reiterate. Want to make sure our information is correct up here. Zenith Systems, A367, US1, everything else should automatically populate. If you've got a status other than pending approval, we need to fix that default. That was what we talked about when we were up in setup, but presumably it is. If you got a form other than the primary sales order form, then you need to go back and create that primary sales order form or make sure it's correct and set as your preferred. Okay. In our items, we should have 5 copies of the product that you made. For most of you, it's going to be for the ILF AIS textbook. For the rest of you who made it something else, it's going to be something else because you don't love AIS, I guess. But yeah, whatever it is you made, quantity of 5. Shipping is going to be some more. UPS, $10. Billing is going to be 1%, 10, net 30. If all that is good, you can click on save. Waiting game. I wonder if it's like this for people who actually work in NetSuite, if they have to wait on the internet connection, or if it's just here at Truman State. I would like to think that in the real world, it's like automatic and you don't have to make up stories. Maybe though, if you're really, really one of those people that just likes having a break between entering invoices, this is actually just kind of downtime for you. Still get to bill this time, but you're not actually doing anything. I don't know. I'm very impatient. I'm one of those people that whenever like something's processing online, if it like takes more than a few seconds, I click and change tabs and start working on something else. And I'm just really, really erratic that way. So this is like my own personal nightmare right here. It's just like, you know, everybody else talks about the kind of nightmares they have. Me is being in a classroom where I have to vamp while the computer is waiting to do something. Okay, that's right there. All right, we have pending approval. So we need to approve this document, but before we do so, your deliverable for today is your sales order that you just created. Okay. So what I want for you to do, highlight over the printer icon and click on print. And it's going to display your sales order. At least hopefully it will display your sales order. Okay. So it's going to have your company name, and it's also going to have a really weird one, Suite Success Financial Company. I already mentioned this. This is a default somewhere that I haven't been able to change. I will fix at some point. But we have the bill to for Zenith Systems, the ship to for Zenith Systems. That should all be correct. All this other information we entered should be consistent. Should be a total of $159.95. And then you just save this morning and upload it to Brightspace, right? A trap. It's a trap. Is anybody just like Admiral Akbar from Star Wars? It's a trap. Yeah, it was a trap. Okay. What do we have to do before we actually submit this to Brightspace? Yeah. We have to make a PDF. Okay. So remember, print out, go to change that to PDF, save that PDF file, then that's your Brightspace deliverable. But here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like you to go ahead and print it out and save your PDF. Do not go to Brightspace yet. Okay. Because we still have one more thing that we need to do in NetSuite. And if you're working on submitting to Brightspace while I'm doing this, you're going to miss the most important part, which is the approval step. All right. So we're going to approve. But one thing that we need to note is in order to approve, we have to make sure that this is a customer that we want to do business with. So we need to check some information. So you'll notice down here on customer 10 Zenith Systems, there's a link. There's a highlight link. So down here in the customer, it says 10 Zenith Systems. Go ahead and click on that hyperlink. And it's actually going to bring up Zenith Systems page. There's a lot of information about Zenith Systems, but we really only need to make sure that there's 2 criteria being met. First of all, we want to check and make sure that there's no overdue balance, which currently Zenith Systems has $0 in overdue balance. So what do you think? Do we meet our first approval criteria? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. They have nothing overdue. They don't owe us any money. Consider our second one is going to be days overdue. We want to make sure there's no days overdue listed here, and there's nothing listed down here, which makes sense because they have no overdue balance. Okay, so no days overdue, no overdue balance. We're good here. We can go ahead and approve this particular customer for shipping stuff too. So here's what we're going to do. We're happy with Zenith Systems. We are going to go ahead and approve them. So click on the back button. going to take us back to the form we were just at. Then I want you to click approve. And now, while you're waiting that to approve, now you can go ahead and upload your thing to Brightspace, okay? We are approved. We now have our sales order. So what's next? Next is that we're going to ship out goods to the customer, and then we're going to send them an invoice, and then we're going to receive payment. Once we've done that, we've finished our revenue process. But you probably have guessed we got one more NetSuite assignment, so that's what we're going to be doing next Wednesday. We're going to be shipping, and we're going to be creating the invoice, and then we're going to select pay or accept payment, and then we're done with the NetSuite for the semester. So yeah, that's basically where we're at right now. Make sure you deliver that sales order that you printed out into a PDF file. Make sure you create a PDF file, upload that to Brightspace. But since you're all very talented people, I'm assuming that you can do things simultaneously. I'm going to start talking about homework. All right, so chapter 12 homework. Ben goes to a bank to wire transfer $1,000 to his sister Jennifer. The role of the bank in this transaction is best described as what? So I used the term intermediary when we were talking about this in the chapter 12 selection, but I also used another term that the book refers to. I don't particularly like this term. I think it's outdated, but this was the one that I included just to make sure they had context. What is another term for an intermediary? Middleman? Yeah, middleman. Somebody in the middle who basically facilitates the transaction. That was the whole goal of chapter 12, is to try to eliminate intermediaries or middlemen. All right, question number 5. A selected set of organizations may run a blockchain node separately from keeping the transaction records. Administrators of the organization establish the access rights and permissions for each blockchain. This type of blockchain is often called, so this is an interesting one. This is a type of question you will see on the exam to actually make sure you can delineate what the different types of blockchain are. So remember, we had our public blockchain, which there's no permission process, okay? We have our private blockchain, which there is a permission process run by one organization or one entity, okay? Then we had our permission process, which is run by multiple organizations simultaneously. That's going to be our consortium blockchain, okay? By the way, that's the one that's the answer to this one, because that's what's being described in the question above. There was a fourth one that's not in the book, but that was one where there's a permissionless process, but it's usually run by one organization. It's usually there's a permission step run by our organization. What was that one called? It has kind of components of both public and private. The hybrid blockchain, okay, hybrid blockchain. So it's important to remember that one because that will also be on the exam. Question number 6, one of my least favorite forms of question. Which of the following statements is false? Well, let's just go ahead and go through the answers, okay? A distributed ledger contains many copies of the same ledger. What do you guys think about that one? Is that a true statement? That sure seems true to me. That would actually be the definition of a distributed ledger. A distributed ledger stores the same set of transaction records. Well, that's the whole point of a distributed ledger, is make sure everybody has the same information. Because a distributed ledger exists in the blockchain network and computer consists of all transaction records, may crash, causing the syncing issues, cause the syncing issue in the blockchain network. So this is an important point to note, is that because of the distributed ledger, the actions of one computer do not affect the actions of other computer, except for the updated transaction records. So we're all in a blockchain node. My computer crashes. Everybody else's computers are still going to update. Now, my computer comes back online, it will update according to the information that's on the blockchain. But this computer crashing does not cause all other computers on the blockchain to crash. So does that mean C is correct or incorrect? C is incorrect. C is incorrect, and that's our answer. Transaction record cannot be added to the blockchain unless there's network consensus. That is a true statement, okay? Network consensus is really important. How do we achieve networks of consensus? That's through validation. We also call the validation process mining, okay? That's how we actually do the validation. So something to we note about, something you've heard. All right, question number 9. When we refer to smart contract and blockchain, we mean, what do we think? A contract that can be edited at any time for business rules? Now remember, smart contract, the word contract is not a literal application in here. It's actually just a transaction process, okay? A digital copy of payment contract is a Word file. No, again, it's not a contract. A digital contract can be distributed to the participants of all the terms fine. So we got 3 terms that use the word contract to describe the smart contract. And if you were not present or paying attention in the class, you're like, oh, well, those all sound good because it's a contract. No, it's a piece of software code that can be executed or triggered by business activities, okay? Even though it uses the word contract, it's basically a transaction mechanism. So D is our answer. Question number 13. Which of the following is not true with respect to artificial intelligence? All right. AI is a broad field of computer science. Well, if we didn't even study things in AI, we'd probably say that's a true statement because it's so broad, okay? AI's intelligence exhibited by machines rather than humans. Yes, that's true. AI began in the 1990s. Is that a true statement? We didn't talk about that in class, so you had to do some research. When did AI begin? When the field of AI began acknowledgement? Anybody go on to Google and say, when did artificial intelligence begin? And go to the Wikipedia page and found out that it was originally used in 1956, okay? Wikipedia is great, isn't it? Does everybody like and appreciate Wikipedia? If you don't like Wikipedia, then I'm going to have to ask you to leave, okay? Because Wikipedia is just the best. Yeah, I know there's sometimes Wikipedia is not accurate, but for the most part, it's a great resource. I still remember what it was like when I was a kid and I had to look up information. I had to actually go get my parents' encyclopedias off the shelf. And those encyclopedias were like 20 years old, so some of the information was outdated. So, I'm going to quit rambling. All right. So C is our answer. AI is also called cognitive technologies. I referred to that in our definition. That's another term for AI is also. Question number 14. Which of the following best describes the difference between AI and machine learning? Machine learning is a subset of AI. That is actually true. Okay, remember we talked about there's different forms of AI. What were the other forms of AI? We talked about bots, natural language processing, and RPA. We can talk about a whole bunch of different other subsets, but there's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all category, such as bots do use elements of natural language processing. Machine learning uses elements of RPA, or vice versa, I should say. We could also talk about large language models and where do those fit. Generally speaking, those are machine learning, but those also contain bot capabilities. So yeah, a lot that can be going in there. And I'm not going to go through the rest because we know A is correct. All right. Which of the following best describes machine learning? All right. Machine learning is also often driven by programming instructions. Would that actually defeat the purpose if a programming instruction was present for machine learning? Like, if you're trying to learn something and then you're just told specifically what to do, it says, no, I don't care if you think something's wrong. Follow my steps word for word, okay? Which is kind of funny because that's kind of what I tell you to do for NetSuite. It's like, well, are we learning anything, Dr. Barnes? It says, yes, because I explained the whole purpose behind the steps. But if we were just talking about, don't even worry about what the reason is, just follow the steps. You're not really learning anything. You're just following steps. Machine learning is a different branch of computer science from AI. That's actually not true. It's a subset of AI. We just talked about that. Machine learning is a technique where software model is trained using data. What do you guys think about that statement? Does that sound like a true statement? I like that statement. So C is probably your answer, but let's go to D. Machine learning is the ability of a machine to think on its own. Not really. It's programming it to learn how to think like a human or act like a human, but it's not really thinking on its own. We're not to true generative AI yet. All right, question number 18. Which of the following best describes deep learning? Deep learning is used to solve philosophical problems. I would love it if the computer could solve philosophical problems, I could go to my concerns. So like, ChatGPT, what is the meaning of life? And instead of getting like embedded comments, it actually have some sort of real meaningful philosophy. But no, that's not deep learning, unfortunately. Deep learning involves complex multi-layered neural networks. What do you guys think about that one? We did talk about the context of neural networks. They're trying to emulate human physiological context. And that's kind of what we said was an aspect of deep learning. So B is our answer. Number 19. All right. Which of the following is not directly related to one of the 5 questions that AI and machine learning is best suited to answer? So remember we talked about the two categories of machine learning and the way it adapts. The 2 very basic levels are classification, which is a yes/no question, and then we had regression, which is trying to determine an amount based on information. We can actually delve into much deeper questions through a combination of those particular questions or particular classifications, particular types. My apologies. That's what we're going. All right. So 5 questions. Let's just go through these. I'm going to start with B for no apparent reason. Is a firm a good merger candidate? Is that one of the types of questions we talked about? Yeah, it's a yes/no question that falls under classification. Okay. What type of customer will like this new product? Okay. That one's also a classification question, that those actually specifying different categories of classification. We would have to expand it beyond 2 categories, but it's still classification. How much can we sell this product for? Okay. Is that kind of a regression question? Yes, because we're asking the amount. The only one that doesn't really fall in any category is which business strategy will be most successful. Even that's a little bit suspect, because if we had the classification of business strategies, you could actually say that's a classification question. But of the ones listed, that would be the one that would be the least likely to be our best suited answer. All right, question number 20. Which of the following best describes supervised learning? by the way, get very comfortable with questions like this because I will definitely ask you multiple questions about this on the exam, okay? At least one, probably multiple questions like this in the exam. All right, so supervised learning. What do we say supervised learning is? Is that we basically are saying you need to learn from this. We know what the answer is. We're trying to make sure you know you can give us the answer that we already know. So if that's the case, if we know what the answer is, then can we say that the training contains input-output pairs is a correct answer? Because we know if we give it certain inputs, what the output should be, all right? So if we have a known output, the training data contains input-output pairs is our closest answer to what we're saying. We know what the output should be. What about unsupervised learning, all right? Unsupervised learning. Well, if we have unsupervised learning, well, do we know anything about the outputs? Do we know what the output should be? No. Unsupervised learning is the direct opposite. It's basically saying we know what the input is, we have no idea what the output should be. If that's the case, the training data only includes input values. Only includes input values. So D is our answer. Which of the following best describes semi-supervised learning? Okay. Semi-supervised learning was really weird because that's the one where you try to trick the computer and say, here's the information. And the computer says, that's not all the detail. It says, well, that's all the detail you're going to get. It has to be able to extrapolate values based on missing information. So the training data contains some missing labels or incomplete data. So A is our answer there. And then 23, which of the following best describes reinforcement learning? Reinforcement learning is characterized by 3 words, trial and error. And I think that the majority of machine learning at least has some context in trial and error, especially the current large language models. But that's what we're looking for here. D is our answer, trial and error. Actually, it's hyphenated. So that'd be 3 words, or that'd be 1 word. What do you guys think? This is really important, by the way. I'm not just, I'm okay, I'm sorry. All right, let's move on. All right. Question number 4, I gave you a little bit of clarification on question number 4. What are the 4 types of blockchain, okay? So, and then what are the major differences among these blockchains? We've already talked about these to the basic level, but we said public blockchain, no access restrictions. Private blockchain usually is permissioned by one party. A consortium blockchain is permissioned, but it's usually multiple parties. And then we said the 4th type, the one that's not listed in the book, but is really important to note, it's a hybrid blockchain. It usually has some sort of authority, but it's got a permissionless process in which public entities can join. So that's a general definition. That's basically all that you really need to know for this particular context, understanding the difference, the major differences among the blockchains. And then question number 6. Recently, more than 20% of companies surveyed they were testing or considering artificial intelligence applications in their businesses. Now, keep in mind, this survey is 2021, because that was when the book was listed, so it's a little bit of an old survey. Only 4% were actively using AI. Why do you think companies are interested in AI but having trouble implementing AI? So the first question says, why companies are interested in AI? That is obvious, is that AI has the propensity to actually change the way that we do business. It can emulate human intelligence at a much lower cost and a much lower, lower capacity. It can do it much more effectively, especially the remedial tasks that take us a long time to do. Think about putting together a amortization table. That's the first thing that came to mind, okay? Has anybody taken 303 and done an amortization table? Yeah. Trying to write those out is brutal. It's murder, okay? Now, we can do it a little bit faster in Excel, but it still takes us to do that. It takes us time to do that. Has anybody created an amortization table using the LLM tool? You give it the inputs, it does it like in a few seconds. So we'll give you as many rows as you want. You can go to 360 periods. So the fact that we can do something that would normally requires a preset of knowledge and just knowing more than the existing inputs is really, really critical, that we can actually use these AI tools to streamline our work. But why are they having trouble implementing AI? So what do you think the primary reason for implementation of AI in organizations is going to be? They're going to be fear? I would say that's a big, big reason. I mean, I don't know if that's a major reason, but I'm not talking about fear of replacing jobs, although that's certainly one of the concerns. But one of the stories I like to tell is I went to a conference last summer, and this is a data analysis conference. There were a lot of sessions about how to use AI tools. So these are the people teaching accounting nationwide at other universities. You want to see a more paralyzed group of people, put them in an AI session where they say, we're going to teach you how to use AI. It says, you're going to have to walk me through this step by step because I'm terrified of using AI. That's the way that I think a lot of people are. As I said, we don't know how this tool works. It's an open-ended tool. We need a specific set of instructions to be able to follow. So think about yourself when you first learned how to use Excel. Did you basically say, okay, I've learned the basics, now I can use it for a lot of different things? Or did you kind of have to be walked through and say, all right, here's the formulas, here's what you can do with the formulas, here's formatting, here's some tools like pivot tables. You need to be able to work through these in specific scenarios. That's the way that most people learn. And AI knowledge doesn't work that way. It's basically saying, we can help you do anything that you want to do. It says anything is a really, really broad boundary. Can you actually narrow it down for me? What is it that I can do? It's like anything, literally anything. It's like, okay, can you make a peanut butter jelly sandwich? Maybe not literally anything, okay? It's one of those things that doesn't have a lot of good boundaries for it, and we operate pretty rationally as human beings as boundaries. The fact that we haven't actually toned down on how to train people how to use these tools. The good news is that everybody in this room, with maybe the exception of me, is kind of coming into this at a point where your learning capacity is going to be much, much broader than mine. Like it's a really, really big struggle for people my age and older to learn about how to use these tools. But when you go out to work, you're going to be saying, okay, if I don't know how to use an AI tool, the AI tool can train me on how to use it. That's kind of a neat little benefit is that you know that there's not really a boundary, there's not really a parameter for what you use. If we say, can we use an Excel template to write a book? It's like, well, Excel is not really well defined for writing a book, but you could actually do it, I suppose. Can you use an AI tool to write a book? The answer is yes. Can you use AI tool to create a pivot table? The answer is yes. It's just got a lot of width and a lot of breadth to what it actually can do. And so, getting past that and basically saying, you don't need to know exactly what it can do. You just need to accept the fact that it can do pretty much anything that you ask it to do. That's kind of the step that we're having trouble getting past right now. And like I said, people my age really having trouble getting past that. So this is the one point in the semester that I will allow you all to say, okay, boom. Okay. All right. Have a good week or have a good day. I'll see you on Friday.